The House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
O guiding wisdom, we come before you today, humbled by the unfolding events of the past 24 hours. And so we gather as citizen servants, ready to embrace anew our call to public service. Be our compass, O wisdom, and guide us back to the heart of stewardship, where the care for community stands above the care of the individual, where the common good stands above the uncommon few. O God of inspiration, where our words fail, may the actions of our governance today reflect the integrity of our call to shape a landscape that's devoted to the well-being of our state and our fellow human being. Where hesitation and allegiance may paralyze us, may your spirit activate us to pursue a vision that brings our constituents together for the livelihood of us all. O God of many names, where the temptation reigns to rage division, bring us back to the ground of our honor, where we drink deeply from the well of wisdom, not the well of rightness. Mold us to be the elected officials worthy of our community support. Soften the hardness within us, dissolve our apathy, and connect us in our diversity so that justice and goodness may flourish. It is in humility and hope we pray to you today. Amen.
The chaplain for today is Reverend Amanda Luneman from United Methodist, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. The clerk will take the roll. Members, please state your name, your location, and present.
Acom.
Acom, Minnetonka, present.
Acom, Minnetonka, present. Agbaje.
Agbaje, Minneapolis, present.
Agbaje, Minneapolis, present. Ackland. Ackland. Albright. Albright, St. Paul, present. Anderson.
Anderson, St. Paul, present.
Anderson, St. Paul, present. Backer.
Backer, New Ulm, present.
Backer, New Ulm, present. Bonner.
Bonner, St. Paul, present.
Bonner, St. Paul, present. Barr.
Barr, East Bethel, present.
Barr, East Bethel, present. Baker.
Baker, St. Paul, present.
Baker, St. Paul, present. Becker Finn.
Becker Finn, Roseville, present.
Becker Finn, Roseville, present. Bennett.
Bennett, Albert Lee, present.
Bennett, Albert Lee, present. Berg.
Berg, St. Paul, present.
Berg, St. Paul, present. Bernardi.
Bernardi, St. Paul, present.
Bernardi, St. Paul, present. Bierman.
Bierman, St. Paul, present.
Bierman, St. Paul, present. Bliss.
Bliss, St. Paul, present.
Bliss, St. Paul, present. Bow.
Bow, St. Paul, present.
Bow, St. Paul, present. Bolden.
Bolden, St. Paul, present.
Bolden, St. Paul, present. Burkle.
Burkle, St. Paul, present.
Burkle, St. Paul, present. Carlson.
Carlson, St. Paul, present.
Carlson, St. Paul, present. Christensen.
Christensen, Stillwater, present.
Christensen, Stillwater, present. Daniels.
Daniels, St. Paul, present.
Daniels, St. Paul, present. Doubt. Doubt, St. Paul, present. Davids. Davids, St. Paul, present. Davney.
Davney, St. Paul, present.
Davney, St. Paul, present. Damuth. Damuth, St. Paul, present. Detmer.
Detmer, St. Paul, present.
Detmer, St. Paul, present. Drazkowski.
Drazkowski, Winona, present.
Drazkowski, Winona, present. Eklund.
Eklund, St. Paul, present.
Eklund, St. Paul, present. Edelson.
Edelson, Edina, present.
Edelson, Edina, present. Elkins.
Elkins, Bloomington, present.
Elkins, Bloomington, present. Erickson.
Erickson, St. Paul, present.
Erickson, St. Paul, present. Feist.
Feist, New Brighton, present.
Feist, New Brighton, present. Fisher.
Fisher, St. Paul, present.
Fisher, St. Paul, present. Frankie. Frankie, St. Paul, present. Franzen.
Branson, St. Paul, present.
Franzen, St. Paul, present. Frazier.
Frazier, New Hope, present.
Frazier, New Hope, present. Frederick.
Frederick, St. Paul, present.
Frederick, St. Paul, present. Freiburg.
Freiburg, Golden Valley, present.
Freiburg, Golden Valley, present. Garofalo.
Garofalo, Farmington, present.
Garofalo, Farmington, present. Gomez.
Gomez, Stillwater, present.
Gomez, Stillwater, present. Green.
Green, St. Paul, present.
Green, St. Paul, present. Greenman.
Greenman, St. Paul, present.
Greenman, St. Paul, present. Grossel. Gruenhagen.
Gruenhagen, St. Paul, present.
Gruenhagen, St. Paul, present. Haley. Haley, St. Paul, present. Hamilton.
Hamilton, St. Paul, present.
Hamilton, St. Paul, present. Hanson R.
Hanson R., St. Paul, present.
Hanson R., St. Paul, present. Hanson J.
Hanson J., Burnsville, present.
Hanson J., Burnsville, present. Hassan.
Hassan, Minneapolis, present.
Hassan, Minneapolis, present. Hausman.
Hausman, St. Paul, present.
Hausman, St. Paul, present. Heinrich.
Heinrich, St. Paul, present.
Heinrich, St. Paul, present. Heinzman.
Heinzman, St. Paul, present.
Heinzman, St. Paul, present. Her. Her, St. Paul, present. Hertas.
Hertas, St. Paul, present.
Hertas, St. Paul, present. Hollins.
Hollins, St. Paul, present.
Hollins, St. Paul, present. Hornstein.
Ornstein, Minneapolis, present.
Hornstein, Minneapolis, present. Howard.
Howard, St. Paul, present.
Howard, St. Paul, present. Hewitt.
Hewitt, St. Paul, present.
Hewitt, St. Paul, present. Igo.
Igo, St. Paul, present.
Igo, St. Paul, present. Johnson.
Johnson, St. Paul, present.
Johnson, St. Paul, present. Jordan.
Jordan, St. Paul, present.
Jordan, St. Paul, present. Jurgens.
Jurgens, St. Paul, present.
Jurgens, St. Paul, present. Keeler.
Keeler, St. Paul, present.
Keeler, St. Paul, present. Keel.
Keel, St. Paul, present.
Keel, St. Paul, present. Cleveland.
Cleveland, St. Paul, present.
Cleveland, St. Paul, present. Kegel.
Kegel, St. Paul, present.
Kegel, St. Paul, present. Katiza-Watun.
Katiza-Watun, Eden Prairie, present.
Katiza-Watun, Eden Prairie, present. Kosnick.
Kosnick, St. Paul, present.
Kosnick, St. Paul, present. Creshaw.
Creshaw, St. Paul, present.
Creshaw, St. Paul, present. Lee.
Lee, Minneapolis, present.
Lee, Minneapolis, present. Liebling.
Liebling, St. Paul, present.
Liebling, St. Paul, present. Lilly.
Lily, St. Paul, present.
Lilly, St. Paul, present. Lippert.
Lippert, Northfield, present.
Lippert, Northfield, present. Lislegard.
Lislegard, St. Paul, present.
Lislegard, St. Paul, present. Long.
Long, St. Paul, present.
Long, St. Paul, present. Lucero.
Lucero, St. Paul, present.
Lucero, St. Paul, present. Lewick.
Lewick, St. Paul, present.
Lewick, St. Paul, present. Mariani. Mariani. Markwart.
Markwart, St. Paul, present.
Markwart, St. Paul, present. Mason.
Mason, St. Paul, present.
Mason, St. Paul, present. McDonald.
McDonald, St. Paul, present.
McDonald, St. Paul, present. Mecklin.
Mecklin, St. Paul, present.
Mecklin, St. Paul, present. Miller.
Miller, St. Paul, present.
Miller, St. Paul, present. Moeller.
Moeller, Shoreview, present.
Moeller, Shoreview, present. Moran.
Moran, St. Paul, present.
Moran, St. Paul, present. Morrison.
Morrison, Deep Haven, present.
Morrison, Deep Haven, present. Mortensen. Mortensen, present. Mueller.
Mueller, St. Paul, present.
Mueller, St. Paul, present. Munson.
Munson, St. Paul, present.
Munson, St. Paul, present. Murphy.
Murphy, St. Paul, present.
Murphy, St. Paul, present. Nash. Nash, St. Paul, present. Nelson M.
Nelson M., Brooklyn Park, present.
Nelson M., Brooklyn Park, present. Nelson N.
Nelson N., St. Paul, present.
Nelson N., St. Paul, present. New Brindley. New Brindley, St. Paul, present. Noor.
Noor, St. Paul, present.
Noor, St. Paul, present. Novotny.
Novotny, St. Paul, present.
Novotny, St. Paul, present. O'Driscoll.
O'Driscoll, Sartell, present.
O'Driscoll, Sartell, present. Olson B.
Olson B., St. Paul, present.
Olson B., St. Paul, present. Olson L. Olson L., St. Paul, present. O'Neill.
O'Neill, St. Paul, present.
O'Neill, St. Paul, present. Pulowski.
Pulowski, St. Paul, present.
Pulowski, St. Paul, present. Petersburg.
Petersburg, St. Paul, present.
Petersburg, St. Paul, present. Farr.
Farr, LeSueur, present.
Farr, LeSueur, present. Pearson.
Pearson, St. Paul, present.
Pearson, St. Paul, present. Pinto.
Pinto, St. Paul, present.
Pinto, St. Paul, present. Poston.
Poston, St. Paul, present.
Poston, St. Paul, present. Pryor.
Pryor, Minnetonka, present.
Pryor, Minnetonka, present. Quam.
Guam, St. Paul, present.
Quam, St. Paul, present. Raleigh.
Raleigh, St. Paul, present.
Raleigh, St. Paul, present. Rasmussen. Rasmussen, St. Paul, present. Ryer.
Ryer, St. Paul, present.
Ryer, St. Paul, present. Richardson.
Richardson, Mendota Heights, present.
Richardson, Mendota Heights, present. Robbins. Robbins, St. Paul, present. Sandell.
Sandell, Woodbury, present.
Sandell, Woodbury, present. Sandsted.
Sandsted, St. Paul, present.
Sandsted, St. Paul, present. Schumacher.
Schumacher, St. Paul, present.
Schumacher, St. Paul, present. Schultz.
Schultz, St. Paul, present.
Schultz, St. Paul, present. Scott. Scott, St. Paul, present. Stevenson.
Stevenson, St. Paul, present.
Stevenson, St. Paul, present. Sundin.
Sundin, St. Paul, present.
Sundin, St. Paul, present. Swazinski.
Swazinski, St. Paul, present.
Swazinski, St. Paul, present. Tice.
Tice, St. Paul, present.
Tice, St. Paul, present. Thompson.
Thompson, St. Paul, present.
Thompson, St. Paul, present. Torkelson.
Torkelson, St. Paul, present.
Torkelson, St. Paul, present. Erdahl. Erdahl, St. Paul, present. Vang.
Bang, Brooklyn Center, present.
Vang, Brooklyn Center, present. Waslowick.
Waslowick, White Bear Township, present.
Waslowick, White Bear Township, present. West.
West Blaine, present.
West Blaine, present. Winkler. Winkler, St. Paul, present. Walgamot. Walgamot, St. Paul, present. Zhang Jie.
Zhang Jie, St. Paul, present.
Zhang Jie, St. Paul, present. Zhang Ti.
Zhang T. St. Paul, present.
Zhang Ti, St. Paul, present. Joachim.
Joachim Hopkins, present.
Where? Joachim.
Joachim Hopkins, present.
Joachim Hopkins, present. Speaker Hartman. Present. Speaker Hartman, St. Paul, present. Ackland.
Ackland, St. Paul, present.
Ackland, St. Paul, present. Mariani. Mariani, St. Paul, present. Everyone's here.
A quorum is present. The clerk will read the journal of the preceding day.
Journal of the House, 92nd Session, 2021, first day, St. Paul, Minnesota, Tuesday, January 5th, 2021.
If there is no objection, further reading of the journal will be dispensed with, and the journal will be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Hearing no objection, the journal is approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Introduction of bills. The following House files have been offered for introduction today. The chief clerk will report the House files and give them their first reading.
Introduction and first reading of House Files number 1 through 37.
First reading, House Files 1 through 37. Messages from the Senate.
Okay, that's what you want. That's no problem. Okay. There we go.
Report from the Report from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
Winkler offers the following resolution and moves its adoption. Be it resolved that the temporary rules of the House for this session, the 92nd regular session, shall be the same as the permanent rules of the House for the last session, the 91st regular session, as they existed on Sunday, May 17th, 2020, with the following exceptions.
Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker and members, so just by way of introduction, we did not adopt temporary rules on the opening day of session. We are doing it today after a hearing yesterday in the Rules Committee. These are temporary rules designed primarily to begin operations of the House. So we established the committees under the temporary rules. We reestablished Rule 10.01, which was new in the last biennium related to the ability of the House to conduct remote hearings. And we provide a sunset for Rule 10.01 at the end of this legislative biennium. So one change that is noteworthy that members may want to be aware of is that under the committee structure proposed, the Committee on Government Operations no longer exists. And provisions in the rules requiring all bills to be referred and heard in the GovOps Committee related to the structure of state government and rulemaking, those provisions of the rules have been eliminated. An earlier draft of the rules also eliminated the requirement for bills related to government data practices to be referred to the Committee on Judiciary and Civil Law. Those provisions were deleted yesterday in the Rules Committee. So that requirement of mandatory referral to Judiciary and Civil Law remains in effect. And so members, this is to get us started, to get committees working, and to get the basic operations of the House going. I made a commitment yesterday in the Rules Committee, and I'll make it here on the floor, that next week the Rules Committee will meet again to consider permanent changes to the rules and establishing a permanent set of rules, and to have a debate here on the House floor and to provide an opportunity for discussion and amendments on the House floor on the permanent rules. This is simply to get us started. Members, I would ask for a yes vote on adoption of the rules.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Robbins moves to amend the temporary rules of the House for the 92nd session as follows. The amendment is coded A01. Robbins.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I bring this amendment because I found that the extension of the remote voting system for both years of the biennium just to be too long. I am an optimist, and I believe that we will not need to do our work remotely beyond the session, the first year of the biennium, which would end on May 18th. And so my amendment would simply say that the remote voting process will end on that date rather than giving us till the end of May 2022. Members, it is very important that we come back to St. Paul and work together as a body as quickly as possible. Our relationships, our in-person deliberations, and our being together is what produces the best work for our state. And so I really find the deadline of May 2022 too long, and I ask for your support to just ending the remote voting period at the end of this first year. Thank you.
Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, members, I would like to point out that Rule 10.01 does not require remote voting in committee or on the floor. It only enables remote voting in the committee on the floor at the direction of the Speaker and only after consulting with the minority leader and the majority leader, and only for the purposes of protecting the health, safety, and safety of the public, staff, and members themselves. So I think it is premature for us to determine that it will be time to gather after the end of this regular session. We could, for example, have special sessions continuing onward like we had in 2020. And for the safety of all, I would recommend a no vote on this. This merely allows us to continue it, and I think the Speaker is very much aware of the value of being in person when it is safe to do so, but not before.
Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I'm going to have a question for Representative Winkler, but just a couple of quick comments. I do know that this provision, there's a little bit of a separation of powers issue in this provision and the way that it's being rewritten here. I think the legislature, the way that Article 10 was written initially, it says that, basically we can only do this if the governor does A, we can do B. We never like to tie anything that we do to what, an action by the governor, and we do that to maintain our separation of powers and us as a co-equal branch of government, even though sometimes it doesn't always feel that way. So I appreciate that that aspect of the change to the 10.01 in the underlying amendment, or in the underlying Rules Committee report, the temporary rules that we're considering to adopt. I do, however, and I have to confess, I did misunderstand in committee. I actually thought that when this change was offered in committee yesterday, that it was just going to end at the end of this session. I frankly like that. I think, this isn't a huge deal for me personally, but I do like the idea of us getting back here in person as quickly as possible and as soon as we can do that safely. So I would just ask Representative Winkler if he would yield for a question. I'll have a question for him.
He will yield. Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and Representative Winkler. If you could just kind of talk us through the reasoning that you think it's important. I might suggest that maybe this Robbins amendment be taken, and then you certainly would have our support in the future if there still is a major concern at the end of this session to extend this. But it might be just a nice kind of protection and show of good faith that you do intend to try to get us back in person and voting in person as quickly as possible. And I fully understand that means when we can do that safely and when we can keep our staff safe, and I appreciate the efforts that you've taken to do that thus far. Obviously, we've already lost a member of our legislature, and we certainly don't want to see that in the future, but we do know that the work we do here is incredibly important. So maybe, Representative Winkler, if you could just kind of walk us through the thinking on why you think it must be done a year later and maybe not, doesn't work to do it now? Or are you willing to kind of consider that change if we make a commitment that we would support extending that if the need is there at the end of this legislative session?
Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, Representative Dowd, this is left in place through the end of next session out of an abundance of caution. We frankly don't know the course of this pandemic. We don't know what the course of the disease will be. We have every reason to hope at this point in time that by the time summer rolls around, things will be more or less back to normal, but we don't know. And in particular, I think of a situation in which we sunset this rule at the end of this session. We could not have a special session organizing session remotely. All members would have to be gathered together in one room. We couldn't convene the next regular session remotely if the circumstances warranted. And so this really provides an opportunity to maximize flexibility for safety, for the members of the House, for staff, and for the public. And I can assure you, well, maybe there are some exceptions. I don't like operating this way. I would rather have my members here. I would rather be able to walk out the door and talk to people. I would rather speak without a mask on the floor. All of those things would be much better. And just as soon as it is safe to do so, we will return to regular order, and we will not continue with remote hearings. The other thing I would add, Representative Dowd, is that we actually have an opportunity through remote participation in committees to allow more voices to participate in the Capitol from farther geographic locations. People who may not be able to drive to St. Paul in order to present a hearing or to testify can do so remotely. So I think there are some things we still need to learn from the pandemic and how it has shaped this institution. But for the sake of safety, we should defeat, at this time, the Robbins Amendment, but we will continue to work together on safety and making sure that we are as operational as we can be.
Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Winkler. I know that these are certainly interesting times, to say the least, and I do very sincerely appreciate the efforts that everyone has gone through to particularly keep our staff safe. I think that's the most important thing. But I actually do feel that it's very important that we get back in person. I'm gonna offer this with my commitment as the leader of the minority party in this chamber, that you have our commitment that if by the end of this session things have not improved and we do need to extend this or leave it in place, you have my commitment that we will do that and we will support that before the end of this session expires. But just because of the severity of the importance of us being back in person and voting in person, and wanting that to happen as soon as possible. And I think as a sign for us of your good faith, we'd appreciate your support in this, that you actually agree that it is important for us to be back in person. So with the commitment that I've made, I'm gonna make a plea to members that to please support the Robbins motion. I want to thank Representative Robbins for her work on this and for her thoughtfulness in making sure that we're respecting health and safety while still understanding the importance of being here in person. So I'm going to ask members to kindly support this, and let's put this change in our rules. And you have my commitment that this caucus would support changing that at the end of this session if things have not improved and we have not aren't in a situation where we can get back in person. So I'm just going to make that plea to the body, and we'll let things fall where they do. So thank you, Representative Robbins and Representative Winkler, and thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Winkler, and then we'll give Representative Robbins the last word.
Madam Speaker, members, I urge a no vote on the motion.
Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I do support your intention, Representative Winkler. I care deeply about the health and safety of this body and our staff, but I also care deeply about transparency and how we function best and getting back to work for the state of Minnesota. And so I think it's very reasonable to expect that we could end the remote voting by the end of this year. And if not, we certainly have the opportunity as members of our own body to revisit that issue. So I would rather than say it extends till May of 2022, end at the end of this first year and then leave ourselves the opportunity to revisit if the health situation dictates that. But I think that approach is much more in the interests of the state of Minnesota. And so I would request a roll call, and I request members to support the amendment. Thank you.
Representative Robbins requests a roll call. Are there 15 hands? There are 15 hands, so there will be a roll call. Members, I believe this will be the first test of our remote voting technology, which requires your fingerprint to verify that it is, in fact, the member of the House of Representatives who is voting. What we will do is I will, in a moment here, say that the clerk will open the roll. The clerk will open the roll. We will record all of those votes that are able to be recorded from those who are using the remote voting technology and from those who are able to use the buttons at their desk in the chamber. And then we will call orally the names of those who didn't have access to either of those voting mechanisms. The clerk will take the roll.
Hey, Kevin. Kevin? Oh, I was going to speak to that resolution, but.
At this point, the clerk will close the roll, will print a list of those who've been able to vote, and we will call the names of those who have not been able to vote yet.
Backer. That doesn't. Backer.
Backer votes aye.
Backer votes aye. Bonner.
Bonner votes nay.
Bonner votes no. Barr.
Barr, aye.
Barr votes aye. Bernardi.
Bernardi, no.
Bernardi votes no. Bierman.
Bierman, no.
Bierman, no. Christensen.
Christensen, no.
Christensen, no. Davney.
Dabney votes no.
Davney, no. Drazkowski.
Drazkowski, aye.
Drazkowski, aye. Okay. Feist.
Feist votes no.
Feist votes no. Gomez.
Gomez, no.
Gomez, no. Green.
Green, aye.
Green, aye. Hanson J.
Hanson J, no.
Hanson J, no. Hausman.
Hausman, no.
Hausman, no. Hornstein.
Hornstein, no.
Hornstein, no. Katiza Watun.
Katiza Watun, no.
Katiza Watun, no. Lucero.
Lucero, yes.
Lucero, aye. Mason.
Mason, no.
Mason, no. Mecklin. Mecklin.
Meckland, aye.
Mecklin, aye. Miller.
Miller, aye.
Miller, aye. Moran.
Moran, no.
Moran, no. Murphy. Murphy. Pearson.
Pearson, aye.
Pearson, aye. Pinto.
Pinto votes no.
Pinto, no. Pryor.
Pryor, no.
Pryor, no. Raleigh.
Raleigh, aye.
Raleigh, aye. Richardson.
Richardson votes no.
Richardson, no. Sandell.
Sandell, no.
Sandell, no. Vang.
Vang, no.
Vang, no. West.
West, aye.
West, aye. Zhang Jie.
Xiong J, no.
Zhang Jie, no.
I am.
Murphy.
Murphy, no.
Murphy, no.
Because introduction's not going to last that long.
Mariani.
Mariani, no.
Mariani, no.
Madam Speaker, point of order, Representative Hertaus.
We're in the middle of a roll call, Representative Hertaus.
Thank you.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 63 ayes and 70 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. I'd like to clarify what will happen on these votes. We're all learning together. What we will do is we will have the technology that people are able to use. We'll go through that, and I said something like that I would have the clerk close the roll. I didn't mean that. What I meant was we're going to end those who are able to vote electronically, and we're going to transition to those for whom we need to call your names. And I will wait and make sure that I have pretty good indication from caucus leaders and from the staff that we have everyone's votes properly recorded. But we can always make a motion to reopen if someone's vote was recorded improperly. Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Point of parliamentary inquiry.
State your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Just a question. Will members who are voting remotely electronically still be able to change their vote or withdraw their vote or change their vote after we've started taking the roll orally here in the chamber?
Yes, they will, Representative Dowd.
Perfect. Thank you.
The goal is to make sure that members have all the rights and privileges through this voting mechanism as they do if they were in the chamber. There's an amendment at the desk.
Point of order.
Representative Hertaus, please state your point of order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and we partly addressed what I was concerned about. You did announce that the board was closed, and procedurally, I believe that to be in error because that allows other members to continue voting while others are locked out. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate the technology we're trying to implement, and I think everybody supports it. And we certainly want to save the chief clerk's voice. So I think these are all good things. But the other problem is for those of us that are remotely and not on the floor, we need to make sure that the technology is added so that we can all clearly see the board and know how the votes are tallying, because it is customary in our chamber to change your mind or change your votes based on what is maybe a close vote and may pass or not pass. So I think this is a challenge that we need to address immediately. One solution might be for House Television to commit during roll call votes to have exclusively one camera on the screen so that we can see the board and know what's going on. But it's quite a handicap for those who are voting orally remotely, as well as those of us who are voting via the fingerprint authentication system that you've implemented. So we still have some hurdles. Let's address it right away at the front of session so that it doesn't become more contentious as we move on. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Hertaus. We will address that issue. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
New Brindley moves to amend the proposed temporary rules of the House as follows, and the amendment is coded A02.
The member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. As we saw the new committee structure come out, there was a division that was noticeably absent. And this year, the Committee on Aging and Long-Term Care was eliminated from our committee structure. I think this is especially concerning this year, as we've seen our loved ones in long-term care facilities and congregate living facilities devastated by COVID-19. We know that to this day, the vast majority of deaths have occurred in these facilities. It seems like the wrong time to eliminate this committee from the legislature. 2 years ago, as we were doing the budget, our friends on the other side of the aisle proposed almost a $70 million cut to our nursing homes. And we can't have that right now, particularly at this time. As our loved ones are struggling, as we continue to deal with the pandemic, now of all times, we need a focus on our loved ones in these long-term care facilities. We need to make sure that we have an appropriate structure in place to thoroughly vet and consider the needs of this group of people. I appreciate the majority's look at the committee structure overall, and I think that it's probably going to be helpful that we've divided the Health and Human Services into two separate committees. An enormous amount of work goes through those committees. Anyone who has served on them knows that they're busy and they deal with very weighty issues. And so I applaud the majority in that move, and I think that that will be good for Minnesota. But I still have a great deal of concern about not giving the proper attention to this particular group and at this particular time in our state's history. So I would ask for a yes vote to support reinstating that division on aging and long-term care. And Madam Speaker, I would ask for a roll call.
Representative New Brindley requests a roll call. Are there 15 hands? Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, Representative New Brindley, I think that we do not need an additional committee. We went from 3 Health and Human Services committees in the last biennium to 4. The goal here is to separate Health and Human Services into 2 separate committees. Each has a division underneath already. And the reason that we are doing it is because traditionally the Health and Human Services bill is so large and the dollar amount involved in it is so considerable that the number of staff working on it at the end of session is too few, and the number of members who are involved in making decisions and negotiating is too few. In addition, the Senate has divided the committees in this manner, and so we are aligning the committee structure with the Senate, providing more staff and more members to work on these critical issues. And the chair of the long-term care division last biennium is the chair of the Human Services Committee this biennium. So long-term care will be very much front and center. We'll have more attention, more staff than ever before, and the amendment isn't necessary, and I would ask for a no vote.
The member from St. Louis, Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate Representative New's amendment, and I am concerned about our population living in long-term care facilities. And I just want to note that we spent considerable time putting together this new committee structure. I personally reached out to Republican chairs in the Senate to collect feedback, and DFL former chairs in the Senate to collect feedback on what has worked, former commissioners of our HHS agencies to find out what would work, because my goal, and I think the goal of many in my caucus and among leadership, was to make sure we could get bills moved through in a timely fashion and address the concerns in the Health and Human Services area. And I am very confident that the new Human Services Finance and Policy Committee will be able to focus in the long-term care area and address all of the needs of that population and the needs during the pandemic. So we have significantly increased a battle plan to address COVID and long-term care. The Minnesota Department of Health many times has presented to our members and to committees about the battle plan to address COVID concerns in long-term care. And many initiatives and funding have been devoted and invested to make sure that we're doing what we can to protect the most vulnerable in long-term care settings. So I'm very pleased with the new structure. I think it's going to work really well, and I'm confident that we'll be able to do more work. We have more staff dedicated to Health and Human Services committees, and we have more committees that can hear the bills. So I think this new model will work well, and I'm confident that we can address the concerns that Representative New brings up.
The member from Scott, Representative Albright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For as many years as I've been here, we have worked tirelessly to bring about a focus on 3 people groups in the state. Those that are in the dawn of life, those are in the twilight of life, and those that are in the shadows of life. And while I take some comfort in Representative Schultz's comments and commitments that her committee structure, which I will be the minority lead on, will focus on this issue, It's not enough. It's not enough. When you have a demographic that is growing by the day, and with the evidence that the last 8 or 9 months have proven, what demographic group should we be focused on even more in the coming months than we have in the past, particularly with regard to the vaccination protocol, the distribution of it, the governance structure and the regulatory ambitions of making sure that our most loved amongst us are protected and are being provided the care and delivery of services that people are paying for, and that they are being provided in a humane, ethical, and caring capacity. Representative Schultz shared the idea that she has expressed and raised questions regard to how the Senate is going to go about taking care of this issue. Candidly, members, I don't think that our focus here should be to be aligning with how the Senate does their work. We are our own chamber. We do things how we feel are best suited to the constituencies that we serve. Members, the new amendment should be adopted, in particular because of going forward to make sure that the health and the vitality of our loved ones is assured, defended with the vigor that we owe them as they move into their twilight years. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Polk, Representative Keel. I'd also like to congratulate you on being the first person to successfully use the right to speak button. Representative Keel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. I was wondering if that worked or not, so now we know it does. I too support Representative New Brindley's amendment. I think that there's something we're lacking here in long-term care, that is served by both the Minnesota Department of Health and also the Department of Human Services. It ranges from, as Representative Albright pointed out, it ranges from all different walks of life. It is all different services, and it also intertwines with a lot of federal funding. I realize others do too, but very important. And it has really come to light recently about some of the care we are giving to our people who are in residential care, lacking certain needs when we are in a COVID crisis that is really kind of softened in rural Minnesota especially, but in general, we need to make sure that those people are cared for, whether they're have health issues and are in long-term care or are aging and may or may not survive COVID. They certainly need more direction, and I believe we should be working with all of those entities, the Department of Health along with the Department of Human Services together. I would hope that both chairs of the health services are looking at how we hear those bills and what we are doing to address their care. I'm really concerned that this falls between the cracks. So I'm really, I would really like to see us do a long-term care division of some sort so that we can address the needs of our especially our seniors, but those who have health needs. Thank you, Madam Chair.
A lot of success with the right to speak button. We will do Grunhagen, then Liebling, then O'Driscoll. The member from Sibley, Representative Grunhagen.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I would ask if Representative Schultz would yield to a question.
Representative Schultz, will you yield to a question?
I will yield.
She will yield. Representative Grunhagen.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Representative Schultz. You were the chair last biennium in the long-term care, and I was the lead for the Republican side of it, I thought we addressed a number of issues pretty much on a bipartisan basis, and I appreciated your leadership. So we know, I'd have to say ditto to some of the previous comments by Representative New and also other members in terms of the concern. And I know it's a big concern of yours. So the other thing, of course, is allowing infectious COVID patients into the nursing homes, which I think has been stopped now, especially with the percentage of deaths that are attributed, total deaths attributed to people in long-term care or assisted living. So the question is, where is this going to be addressed? In which committee are the concerns that have been stated, and also what we talked about last session? So which committee is going to be overseeing the long-term care area?
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Gruenhagen. It was enjoyable working with you on long-term care. Even though it was a small committee, we did important work.
Yep.
I think, we're going to have much more visibility because it will be in the Human Services, Finance, and Policy Committee, which I'll be the chair of. So we can actually do more work, the larger committee and more staff, and it will have, I think, more visibility for our issues in long-term care. And that'll be a significant part of that committee because we have other divisions to cover other big areas in health and human services. And I also want to mention that I don't recall that when the Republicans were in control in 2017 that we had a long-term care committee. But I want to assure members that this is a priority for me, and there is a lot of work to do in this space. And I'm confident that we can get the work done in this new committee structure.
Representative Gruenhagen.
Oh, thank you for that response, Representative Schultz. And I don't think I'm on your committee. So the next question is, will you miss me? No, just kidding. Thank you.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and members. So I just wanted to add a couple of quick points to this debate. First of all, a reference was made to money going into nursing homes. And, it's really ironic, isn't it? And I hope we'll have a lot more discussion about this because clearly some of you who think that we should just spend lots and lots and lots of money have to admit that perhaps the money wasn't really helping all that much. Perhaps we weren't getting as good a result as we needed to with that money because at the beginning of the pandemic, there were certainly issues in long-term care. So there were gaps, and the pandemic has taught us a lot. And I hope that as we go forward, that Representative Schultz's committee, which I also will be sitting on, will be able to tackle some of these issues, systemic issues that deal with not only how much money we spend, but how we spend that money. We have this kind of debate every 2 years for you new members, and members often bring up, this, I guess, the symbolism of having a committee on one thing or another. When we designed this new structure, we were thinking about efficiency. We were thinking about the ability to really handle some of these issues and focus on them without what we did a little too much of in the last term, which is a lot of shuffling of things from one place to another. So having Representative Schultz's committee, Policy and Finance, is going to allow a real deep focus on the long-term care issues. And, we could sometimes in the past, Republicans have said that we were growing government when we had a lot of committees. So for those of you who want to vote yes on this amendment, I would just suggest to you that what you're doing is growing government. Because if we were to put in yet another committee, we'd need more staff, and members would have their time further divided. And there are costs involved with running each committee. So if you want to grow government, I would say go ahead and vote for this amendment because that is what you will be doing. If you want to sincerely focus on long-term care, I think that the Human Services Policy and Finance Committee is going to be a great place to do that and start getting those bills ready, because I know Representative Schultz is going to be doing a considerable amount of work, especially with the challenges that COVID has revealed to us. And finally, I do just also want to mention that at the end of the last special session, that we attempted to put some dollars into helping deal with the pandemic, helping continue to make improvements in long-term care to deal with the infections, because those folks are at very high risk of having bad outcomes. We know that. They are elderly people, people with pre-existing conditions, and that is who's in our nursing facilities, let's face it. They have a very high risk. We tried to put forward some funding to continue to deal with that challenge. And our Republican friends in the other body rebuffed it, and we didn't get a lot of support from the Republicans in this body either. So, you know, we all need to step it up and do better and put our work and what money we have where our mouths are. So thank you, members. I urge you to vote no.
The member from Stearns, Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. As a legislator from central Minnesota, I have two rather large long-term care facilities that are in my community. And I'm listening to some of the debate and rhetoric today. I don't know that this is a Democrat or Republican issue. I think that we need to value the lives of the elderly. They have paved the way in many cases for us to have the kinds of luxuries and the lifestyles that we have this day and age. And with the aging population, the baby boomers, the COVID issues, the ongoing issues that we have seen with nursing homes, the ability to recruit qualified staff and to maintain qualified staff in these facilities, particularly now in these challenging times. I find it kind of ironic that we are eliminating something that I think is short-term or something that we're going to wish we'd have done for our long-term needs. Members, if you have a nursing home or a long-term care facility in your district, I would ask you to think twice about voting no on this and the message that you'll be sending to people back home in your district as to whether you value this aspect of the population and want to call out, because we're all going to be there someday if all goes well. So with that, members, I would encourage you to vote and to support the new Brindley amendment. Thank you.
The member from Meeker, Representative Erdahl.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members, and I think a lot of good reasons have been given why this amendment deserves support. Let me just say that our nursing homes are at the front line of the crisis that we're facing right now. And we need to make sure that their concerns and what they are trying to do gets the proper attention and recognition that it deserves from this legislative body. And I particularly want to mention that in many of our small towns in greater Minnesota, the biggest industry, the biggest employer in those towns are nursing homes. And so they are of critical importance to greater Minnesota, and I believe that should be reflected in what we do here.
I'm not sure if Representative Schultz is seeking recognition for a second time. Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to add a few things. I forgot to mention that Human Services, Finance, and Policy is going to be meeting 3 times a week. You know, when I chaired the Long-Term Care Committee last session, we met regularly once a week. So this is going to be, we're going to have more opportunity to focus on long-term care issues. And, you know, I guess long-term care was a subcommittee in prior sessions, but it didn't meet very often. And so this is, you know, we're definitely going to dive into addressing issues in long-term care. This is going to be a big topic. In fact, I think our first hearing, we're going to hear from the Minnesota Department of Health about long-term care and COVID. So you're going to have to understand that it's the work we do and not necessarily what the names of the committees are or how they're structured. We're going to do a lot of work like we have in the past in this area. And so I'm confident that members are going to have their bills heard, and we're going to do work in this area in a bipartisan way. That's why it was so important to work with others and collect information on how to structure it so we can do more work in this new situation we have by working remotely.
The member from Isanti, Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and members. I think I feel like that old guy now that just talks about the past all the time. But I think it's worth noting that we pay attention to our history, and I have also committed myself to being the nicer, friendlier Kurt this session. So behind this mask, I'll actually be smiling as I point out all your inaccuracies and everything that you just said. But it is important to do that. You know, when I was Speaker of the House in 2015, I created for the first time ever in the Minnesota legislature a committee dedicated just to our aging population and the long-term care facilities that support them. And we did that because that was a priority. And I think we owe it to those people, those loved ones, the greatest among us who have done so much for us. We owe it to them to give them the best care possible. And we owe it to the workers and the facilities who are giving them the best care that we can absolutely provide. So, you know, I was very proud to create that committee for the first time ever in the legislature. I want to thank the current majority, the then minority, who, when they took the majority in the last previous election, I guess now, continued that committee for one biennium. But unfortunately, that is no longer. And I will say, in my time as Speaker of the House, that 4 years, the single thing that I am the most proud of that we accomplished was reforming the way we reimburse our long-term care facilities to actually reimburse them for the cost of care. And it was generational reform. It finally provided the ability for them to hire the best people to compete in the marketplace and get the best people in, and more importantly, to maintain those people and keep them there long term. Because I knew, and the reason that this was important to me is I was the family member who was the closest when both of my grandparents were in the nursing home in my local community. And I was in college at the time, and I did a lot of caring for them. I went to see them often and took them out of the nursing home. And I saw the relationships that they built with their caregivers in the nursing home and how important those relationships were. And I knew that if those people turned over and they would lose the people who cared for them that they considered to be their friends, and somebody new came in, I saw that it affected them and their lives and their happiness. So for me, this was incredibly important. And what I did is I listened to the long-term care community in what they needed. And when we provided that funding, that generational reform and funding, we didn't put strings on it. We let them give it where they needed it in each local community. Because what was good for Bloomington wasn't good for Black Duck, right? Minnesota is a varied state and with varied needs in different communities. So what we did when Republicans were in the majority in this chamber is we showed our priority by giving a committee that would focus just on this issue. And while Representative Schultz, I appreciate that you're on a different committee now and that you pledged to work on this issue, and you think that your new committee is going to meet more often than the long-term care committee did, I'm going to remind you and the people at home that the long-term care facility this session meets 0 times per week. 0. And more concerning is not just that you're eliminating that committee that's dedicated to just looking at those issues for those people and those workers who are very important to all of us, but that generational funding that we gave to nursing homes, and I don't want to mention names, but I think we all know who led the charge to cut nursing home funding by $67 million in the last biennium, in the last budget, 2 years ago. And then stood on the House floor and claimed that they weren't cutting nursing homes, when the fiscal note couldn't have been clearer that that proposed budget would cut our loved ones and the people who care for them by $67 million. And they did that not now when we have a $1 billion+ deficit looming in the tails. They did it when we had $1.5 billion surplus. So I'm sorry. Our actions need to match our words in this chamber. If you say that long-term care is a priority, then show us. Because eliminating the committee and cutting them $67 million doesn't show us that those people are a priority for you. I know. We want to line up our committees with the Senate, right? So that when we pass a bill here, it matches the committee structure in the Senate. And I know that it's easy sometimes to overlook and maybe not catch something that seems obvious to all of us. And please brace yourselves, because I don't want you to fall out of your chair. But you can't in this chamber tell me that you're eliminating this committee because you want to line up your committees with the Senate. Because I'm going to break some news to you. The Republicans in the Senate do have a long-term care and aging committee. They didn't eliminate it. So if you want to line up your priorities with long-term care, you should show them by creating a committee. And you should not cut them $67 million when we have a surplus in this state. And you should not make excuses about why you're doing it that simply are not true. So Representative Schultz, I appreciate you. I do enjoy working with you. But your caucus's history on long-term care issues is flawed. But it's not quite as flawed as your memory. Because you are not remembering that your actions today don't match your words by saying that long-term care is a priority. If it really is a priority, your opportunity is to vote for Representative New Brindley's amendment. Let's show the world and recreate that committee. Let's roll up our sleeves and show these people, our aged population among us, the loved ones that we all know need that care because they cared so dearly for us. And almost more importantly, the great hardworking people who roll up their sleeves every day to care for them. Those are the two populations that this is about, not about us and not about our empty words and empty promises and faulty memories and misplaced priorities. Here's your opportunity. Thank you, Representative New Brindley. Give her a yes vote. Let's create this committee and let's really show these people that we care about them.
The member from Blue Earth, Representative Munson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This has been an interesting conversation today, and while I do support changing legislation and policy to protect our seniors in long-term care facilities, I was a member of the Long-Term Care Committee last year with Representative Grunhagen, and we did not meet but once a week. And even during the pandemic, most of the work was done in the Health and Human Services committees. So I don't believe that adding an additional committee is going to specifically address this. And I'm going to be voting no today because I don't believe we need more committees. Just wanted to explain my vote. I do support the focus on long-term care legislation, but I don't believe in having yet another committee. So I'll be voting no today. Thank you.
Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, members, I ask for a no vote. Members, I think it would be awfully surprising to people working in long-term care and living in long-term care facilities that a committee from the Minnesota House of Representatives, absent funding and safety equipment and raises for workers and retention bonuses for workers, is how we show support. Members, we can do the work if we roll up our sleeves. We had House File 4 prepared in the last special session. We could not get Senate Republicans on board with that bill to get money out the door to long-term care facilities to help them better manage the pandemic. Members, we don't need a committee. We need action. Please vote no.
Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members, and I appreciate the discussion. I think that a lot of good points have been brought up on both sides, and again, I would reiterate that I very much appreciate the words of the majority and what's been said today, that there will be a focus on our loved ones in long-term care facilities. But I also feel like we need to set the record straight a little bit on a few of these items and just put a bit of a finer point on the importance of why I'm bringing this amendment forward. First of all, there have been a few references to legislation at the last special session. This is legislation that I was very aware of. I worked on myself. It's legislation that, frankly, I talked to my leadership about and said that I think we probably need to do this. I think it's a good idea. So to be clear, we supported that. But on the flip side, I also want to be clear that that legislation did not appropriate money to our long-term care facilities. So just to be clear on that, there were some important pieces of that to support our long-term care facilities, but it did not provide funding to them. So I want to be clear on what was happening there. I also want to draw attention to a couple of things. As I mentioned in my opening comments, this is perhaps the most critical time we have ever seen, certainly in our lifetimes, to be focusing on our loved ones in long-term care facilities. As we know, and as was referenced earlier in some comments by the majority, the beginning of this pandemic really did show some things, and they showed that we've got some pretty serious concerns that we need to address. One of the reasons that I brought this forward, and I mentioned in our Rules Committee yesterday, is that ideally, I hope that it is the goal of everyone in the legislature and not just the Republicans, but I hope that it is all of our goal to take on a larger role moving forward in managing the pandemic. We have now spent 10 months with one person controlling everything that happens in this state. And there have been mistakes. And one of those mistakes was early on in this pandemic, sending COVID-positive patients into our long-term care facilities. This was devastating. This was devastating to our senior population and those living in long-term care facilities and congregate care facilities. Devastating. That was a decision made by our governor. That's the kind of thing that when we sit around a committee table or a virtual committee table, as the case may be right now, we have a lot more eyes and ears on an issue, and we can discuss these things and recognize together that a mistake was made and we need to do things differently. We can talk about things like what's happening currently. I was talking to a colleague recently who told me that his daughter is a 17-year-old nursing assistant working in a long-term care facility. Right now, we know that this is a priority, a top priority for receiving the vaccine, our long-term care facilities. So the staff has been receiving those vaccines. However, those staff who are under the age of 18 are not receiving the vaccine. Now, as a healthy 17-year-old, there isn't a lot of risk to that person, to the employee, if they get COVID. Statistically, they will be fine. They'll be okay. However, in conjunction with vaccinating these employees, long-term care facilities are no longer doing the robust testing that they've done in the past. That means that we've got a vulnerability there for our long-term care population. That means that there is a 17-year-old who could contract COVID anywhere, of course, as we know. And as we also know, we can be as careful as imaginable and still get the virus. Sadly, I have a couple of people in my life who I've known, a family member and one friend, who are extraordinarily cautious. They were extraordinarily cautious. They knew that they were a high risk for what would happen to them if they got COVID-19, and they did. And sadly, they both passed away. These were two people who were locked down. They did not leave their homes. They ordered in their groceries. They could not have been more careful, and yet they got the virus. So even if that 17-year-old is as careful as imaginable, it's possible that they're going to get the virus. And without that robust testing happening in those long-term care facilities, they could bring that into our long-term care facilities still. There are real issues and real concerns that need to be addressed. I would reiterate that, to see this committee eliminated this year of all years seems incredibly short-sighted. And again, I appreciate the comments from the majority that there will be a focus. But those of us who have sat on these committees, these health and human services committees, know the amount of work and the amount of bills that come before us in those committees. I do not believe for a second that without a committee dedicated to the work of aging and long-term care, that it will get the same attention. Having sat on those committees, it is just not possible. Even if the committee only meets once a week, that will be more dedicated time to these issues than they will receive in the other committees. Members, I implore you to consider now of all times is not the time to eliminate this committee. We need to be focused on this population right now. We need to be focused on making sure that we have lots of eyes and ears looking at this, and not just as an addendum to their other work, but as a primary focus of their work. And in order to do that, it makes the most sense to reinstate the Committee on Aging and Long-Term Care. I would ask for a yes vote on this. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment. The clerk will call the roll.
Backer.
Backer votes aye.
Backer votes aye. Barr.
Barr votes no.
Barr votes no. Bernardi.
Bernardi, no.
Bernardi, no. Bierman.
There's got to be a reason.
Bierman.
Bierman votes no.
Bierman, no. Christensen.
Christensen, no.
Christensen, no. Drazkowski.
Drazkowski, no.
Drazkowski, no. Feist.
Feist, no.
Feist, no. Gomez.
Gomez, no.
Gomez, no. Green.
Green, aye.
Green, aye. Hanson J.
Hanson J, no.
Hanson J, no. Hausman.
Hausman, no.
Hausman, no. Hornstein.
Hornstein, no.
Hornstein, no. Katiza Watun.
Katiza Watun, no.
Katiza Watun, no. Lucero.
Lucero votes yes.
Lucero votes aye. Mariani.
Mariani, no.
Mariani, no. Mason.
Mason, no.
Mason, no. Mecklin. Mecklin.
Macklin, aye.
Mecklin, aye. Miller.
Miller, aye.
Miller, aye. Moran.
Moran, no.
Moran, no. Murphy.
Murphy, no.
Murphy, no. Pearson.
Pearson, aye.
Pearson, aye. Pryor.
Pryor, no.
Pryor, no. Raleigh.
Raleigh, aye.
Raleigh, aye. Richardson.
Richardson, no.
Richardson, no. Sandell.
Sandell, no.
Sandell, no. Swazinski.
Swazinski, aye.
Swazinski, aye. Vang.
Vang, no.
Vang, no. West.
West, aye.
West, aye. Zhang Jie.
Young J, no.
Zhang Jie, no.
Please recall Miller to ensure it was properly recorded.
Miller.
Miller, aye.
Miller, aye.
Have all members voted who wish to vote? The clerk will close the roll. There being 59 ayes and 74 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, members, as I said at the beginning, I urge adoption of these temporary rules today. We will return to the topic of permanent rules of the House next week, and we can get our committees going today.
Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Despite the amendments that weren't added, I would still encourage people to support the temporary rules. Thank you.
Oh. A roll call is required on adoption of the temporary rules. The clerk will take the roll. Right, I think we're down. The clerk will call the roll.
Backer.
Backer votes aye.
Backer votes aye. Barr.
Barr, aye.
Barr, aye. Bernardi.
Bernardi, aye.
Bernardi, aye. Bierman.
Bierman, aye.
Bierman, aye. Christensen.
Christensen, aye.
Christensen, aye. Drazkowski.
Drazkowski, no.
Drazkowski, no. Feist.
Feist, aye.
Feist, aye. Gomez.
Gomez, aye.
Gomez, aye. Green.
Green, no.
Green, no. Hanson, J.
Hanson, J, aye.
Hanson, J, aye. Hausman.
Hausman, aye.
Hausman, aye. Hornstein.
Hornstein, aye.
Hornstein, aye. Katiza Watun.
Katiza Watun, aye.
Katiza Watun, aye. Lucero.
Lucero, yes.
Lucero, aye. Mariani.
Mariani, aye.
Mariani, aye. Mason.
Mason, aye.
Mason, aye. Mecklin.
Meckland, aye.
Mecklin, aye. Miller.
Miller, aye.
Miller, aye. Moran.
Moran, aye.
Moran, aye. Murphy. Murphy. Pearson.
Murphy, aye.
Murphy, aye. Pearson.
Pearson, aye.
Pearson, aye. Pryor.
Pryor, aye.
Pryor, aye. Raleigh.
Raleigh, aye.
Raleigh, aye. Richardson.
Richardson, aye.
Richardson, aye. Sandell. Sandell.
Sandell, aye.
Sandell, aye. Swazinski.
Swazinski, aye.
Swazinski, aye. Vang.
Bang, aye.
Vang, aye. West.
West, aye.
West, aye. Zhang J.
Young J, aye.
Zhang J, aye. That's two people. Poston.
Poston, aye.
Poston, aye. Green.
Green changes from no to aye.
Green changes from no to aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 130 ayes and 3 nays, The motion prevails and the temporary rules of the House are adopted. Messages from the Senate.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to announce that the Senate of the State of Minnesota is now duly organized pursuant to law with the election of the following officer. Jeremy R. Miller, President of the Senate. The message is signed Cal R. Ludeman, Secretary of the Senate.
Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate. Madam Speaker, I hereby announce the adoption by the Senate of the following Senate concurrent resolution herewith transmitted. Senate concurrent resolution number 1, a resolution relating to the adoption of temporary joint rules. Senate concurrent resolution number 1 is being referred to the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration. Message from the Senate. Madam Speaker, I hereby announce the adoption by the Senate of the following Senate concurrent resolution herewith transmitted. Senate concurrent resolution number 2, relating to parking space in the Capitol area for members and staff. The message is signed Cal R. Ludeman, Secretary of the Senate. Senate concurrent resolution number 2 is being referred to the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
The member from Candy Ojai, Representative Miller, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A point of personal privilege.
Please state your point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So a brief Minnesota civics lesson for new members. You can have anything entered into the House Journal as a protest and dissension against another member if only 2 members agree to it. Now, this low threshold is good as it allows for people with little or other recourse to have a voice, but it can also be misused. For those who do not read the Journal, which I'm guessing is most of you, 8 members, surprisingly to me, veteran members of the Democrat caucus, found it necessary to write a complaint of myself and other Republicans who wrote to the Texas AG asking he include Minnesota in his states he was suing to investigate voter fraud. So our own AG was not willing to do so, and so in desperation and by the request of many constituents, certainly in my district and in other districts, we reached out for his help. We did not break any laws. We did not lash out at anyone, no name calling. We simply said we see problems with the voting and asked for help, desperate as the request may have been. In this protest and dissension, these members placed it on themselves to determine we disgraced the body in doing so. There was no ethics complaint. None of them came to me or anyone else to ask why I was doing this. No, they put it on themselves to decide for themselves. This was so egregious to do, to write a letter to the Texas AG that they want to place it into Minnesota law. They want to place in the Minnesota law their disgust. Members, is this what we've devolved into? Every time one member doesn't like what another member does, we register it? This could go on and on. Does anyone watch The Office? Michael decides to bring out every complaint one person in the office has over another to try and fix it, and guess what happens? Chaos ensues. I think there are people in this chamber who disgrace our office all the time. Do we really want to do this day after day, wasting the time of this body and the clerk's office bickering back and forth? This is beneath our seat in the House. But it's also disturbing. What this action by these Democrat members does is stifle representation of our district for fear of reprisal by this body. If I'm not breaking any laws or truly sullying the reputation of this House, it is up to my voters to decide if what I have done is valid, not other members. There was a member a few years ago who was watching porn on the House floor on his house computer, and he never received this treatment. There have been members I've witnessed berating people publicly with profanity who do not receive this treatment. But I dare challenge in an election, which is my legal right to do, and I am condemned by this body for my actions. This is chilling if this continues. There may be people in this chamber who will disagree with me and my politics or issues, but I hope all of you agree with me that this institution is to be honored and respected. This protest and dissent does neither. Yes, you're able to see in official print something you don't like. You get to see your name on the good side and a few nasty Republicans on the wrong side. Maybe you show it to a few friends and family, but it does nothing except this journal is literally the history and law of this great institution and has been for the entirety of our history through war, through economic hardships, in our good days and in our worst. When I was first elected, former State Senator Dave Thompson, a good friend, told me to never forget the honor and privilege of serving in this great institution. Do members of this House truly want us to devolve into bickering and backroom tactics? I'm told I cannot change what has already been placed in the journal, which is fine. My conscience is clear. But I strongly encourage this body to stop with the games and do the business of the people in a manner we have been asked to do it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Wright, Representative Lucero, for what purpose do you rise?
Madam Speaker, could you, who did you just recognize?
Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is easy to get sidetracked and multitask here. So, thank you, Madam Speaker. I would also like to bring up a point of personal privilege.
State your point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And on this same note that Representative Miller just brought up, I am equally concerned. I would like to share some background on this. So the complaint, as I'm reading here, the complaint that's being entered into the journal says, considering the totality of circumstances, we believe that Minnesota Secretary of State Simon knowingly and deliberately conducted an illegal election by virtue of his manipulation of the law. As legislators, we were dismissed and our authority was overruled by an individual that was not interested in following the law. That's the objection that's being entered into the journal by some of our colleague members of the House of Representatives. So by way of background, Madam Speaker and members, the United States Constitution, to help understand the decisions of those of us who co-signed this letter to the Texas Attorney General. The United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 4, reads, the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed by each state, by the legislature thereof. Members, the state legislature of each of the states, and in our case, Minnesota, is the Minnesota House of Representatives and the Minnesota Senate. It is not any other individual. It is not any other office. It is not any other branch of government. The legislature of this state is us. Very clearly, black and white, simplistic to understand, United States Constitution. For this reason, members, I was one of two plaintiffs that filed a lawsuit last year. And that lawsuit worked its way up, and eventually we were granted an injunction by the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. We were successful. And so some of the background that led to that lawsuit includes the following. Article 2, Section 1 of the United States Constitution grants Congress the sole authority to determine the time of election. Congress set election day last year to be November 3rd. Sole authority. Long-standing Minnesota election law passed by the Minnesota legislature and signed into law by the Minnesota governor requires all ballots must be received by 8 p.m. on election day to be qualified to be counted. So the legislative branch passed law and the executive branch signed it into law, and that had been the law. 8 p.m. is the cutoff time for many, many years. But then last year, because Secretary Simon was unable to change the law via the established process through the legislature, instead, a lawsuit was filed by Minnesota Alliance for Retired Americans Educational Fund against Minnesota Secretary of State Simon. Now, it is interesting to note that the National Alliance for Retired Americans professes their goal to mobilize retired union members, seniors, and community activists to advocate a progressive political and social agenda, unquote. That is their objective. This is the group that sued our Secretary of State, Steve Simon. The legal representation for the lawsuit against Secretary Simon by this group was Mark Elias at Democracy Docket, a progressive group with ties into the DNC, Democrat National Committee, and other national Democrats. Strong links here, all documented. This same group filed similar lawsuits in most of the states considered to be battleground in advance of the November election, because similarly, they were not able to change election law via the established constitutional process. Democrat Secretary Simon should have defended the law, but instead he flushed more of Minnesota's election integrity down the toilet when he folded and simply agreed with the demands of the left-wing plaintiffs and entered into a consent decree, which was approved by a judge.
Representative Lucero, under a point of personal privilege, you must confine your remarks to the matters that relate to you personally.
Madam Speaker,
Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So what I am doing is giving background to the letter that I was a co-author on that was sent to the Texas Attorney General, which subsequently colleague members of this body, Democrats, have now entered into the journal a complaint. And so there are members of this body who are not familiar with the background that we sent to the Attorney General of Texas. That is the reason why I'm filling in this background, Madam Speaker. So I will continue so that members of this body have a full understanding of the background of the complaint that the Democrat side of this institution is filing against a handful of members that were co-authors. Thank you for allowing me to clarify, Madam Speaker.
The member from Sibley, Representative Gruenhagen, for what purpose do you rise?
Point of personal privilege.
State your point of personal
Madam
privilege.
Speaker, point of order.
State your name, the person who's seeking recognition on a point of order.
Representative Lucero, I have not finished. I still have the floor.
Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Lucero. I thought you were done. Representative Lucero, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So let's see, continuing where I left off, Democrat Secretary Simon should have defended the law. But instead, he flushed more of Minnesota's election integrity down the toilet when he folded and simply agreed to the demands of the left-wing plaintiffs.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
Representative Winkler, please state your point of order.
Madam Speaker, under a point of personal privilege, the member must confine their remarks to their own personal feelings, not a history of the world.
Representative Lucero, point of personal privilege relates to allegations made against an individual. Hold on just a second. They are questions affecting the rights, reputation, and conduct of members of the body in their representative capacity. Questions of privilege must relate to persons as members of the body or relate to charges against their character that would, if true, incapacitate them from membership. Persons raising questions of personal privilege must confine themselves to the remarks that concern them personally. Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and that is exactly what I'm doing. I am addressing the charges that have been entered into the Minnesota House Journal that have a direct detrimental impact on myself. And in order to defend those actions, defend myself against those actions, I need to provide background. So the fact that I am speaking of other individuals doesn't mean I'm violating any House rules. I am referencing other individuals to give the background that led up to the cause of action by members of this institution. So, Madam Speaker, I'm going to continue, and the majority leader can continue to inject himself, but he's doing so inappropriately. The fact that I'm listing another name doesn't mean I'm violating House rules. Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I continue. Election integrity is flushed down the toilet when he folded and simply agreed to the demands of the left-wing plaintiffs and entered into a consent decree, which was approved by the judge, herself a former state director for Democrat U.S. Amy Klobuchar, appointed by Democrat Governor Mark Dayton.
Representative Lucero, personalities are not in dispute. You may discuss the facts of the situation that you would like to discuss without identifying individuals. Please stick to the merit and not the individuals involved.
Madam Speaker, under what authority am I not supposed to list other names as facts relating to the issue at hand? I am not questioning motives. I am providing background and specifying the names of individuals involved in the background.
Representative Lucero, it's either Masons 124 or Masons 121. It's not personalities in debate. You may talk about what individuals have done without using their names.
And am I, Madam Speaker, if I can ask you another question, am I prohibited from using names when talking about what other people's actions have done?
Yes, Representative Lucero, the custom and usage of the House is that it is the subject of the issue that is in debate and not personalities. And the way that we debate issues in the Minnesota House of Representatives is to confine our remarks to the subject matter and not the personalities engaged in making decisions related to the subject matter.
Okay, Madam Speaker, I am not debating personalities. I'm debating the issue. I am citing the background of individuals involved with the issue. I'm not debating the personalities. I am providing facts and background, not questioning motives or any other matter.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
Hold on. Representative Lucero, if you persist in using individuals' names, you will be out of order. Someone's rising to a new point of order.
Point of order.
Whoever the individual who is rising to a new point of order, please identify yourself.
It's Representative Drazkowski, Madam Speaker.
Representative Drazkowski, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm rising to a point of order. Madam Speaker, I believe you are out of order today. We have the part in Masons that talks about personalities is talking about personalities in the chamber. On top of that, Madam Speaker, I'll remind you and the members that we have custom and usage in this body that uses people's names from throughout our state, throughout our country, in order to bring clarity and context to our discussion. Certainly, Madam Speaker, we wouldn't call somebody out of order for invoking Abraham Lincoln's name or Thomas Jefferson's name or anyone else's name in order to describe what they're talking about and give the proper context. Custom and usage, Madam Speaker, trumps Masons, and therefore I believe that your remarks to Representative Lucero are out of order.
Representative Drazkowski, I find your point of order not well taken. Please read Masons 124.3. If an individual would like to refer to the governor of the state of Minnesota, the member from Hennepin, a judge of Ramsey County, that would be permissible under our rules and our custom and usage. Beyond that, it would be improperly invoking personalities in debate. Representative Lucero, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And as I continue, I will do my best with my prepared notes here. When I come across a name, and there aren't that many more references to individual names, but I will do my best, Madam Speaker, to cite an office that they hold or their title and not their individual name. So I'm trying to figure out where I left off here. So we had, by background here means a background, we had the left-wing progressive group represented by left-wing progressive lawyers file a lawsuit against a progressive left-wing Democrat Secretary of State, and he simply agreed to rewrite election law he ordinarily would have been expected to defend. But instead, the changes were approved by a Democrat appointed judge. This is called collusive consent. Among the provisions agreed to in the consent decree, Minnesota will count ballots that arrive up to a week after November 3rd, regardless if the ballots are postmarked or not. So that's just a little bit of a background. So looking at the letter then that we wrote and co-authored to the Texas Attorney General, I'll read select portions here. We are writing to you in support of your lawsuit regarding the 2020 elections and request that you include Minnesota in the list of states against whom you are filing suit. The laws which govern our elections are incredibly important. And Madam Speaker, I think each and every one of us agrees with that statement. State legislatures go to great lengths to ensure that fair and reasonable laws exist to maintain the integrity of our elections. As you know, only the elected members of state legislatures are permitted to change these laws. That is how our constitutional government works. Members, I hope you can see now why I provided some background as to the events that led up to the rewriting of election law, usurping the legislative branch, us. As our letter to the Texas Attorney General continues, unfortunately, a troubling
Point
pattern.
of order, Madam Speaker. Under Mason, Section 222, questions of personal privilege, questions of privilege of members must relate to persons as members of the body or relate to charges against their character, which would, if true, incapacitate them for membership. Persons raising questions of personal privilege must confine themselves to the remarks that concern them personally. You can only talk about yourself, Representative Lucero, not everyone else.
Representative Lucero, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to completely disregard what the Majority Leader just said. Nonsense. There was an issue filed in the House Journal regarding a letter sent, and I am reading that letter, Madam Speaker and Representative Winkler. I'm reading the letter. It directly impacts. Stop interrupting, Madam Speaker and Representative Winkler. You know, I have a tendency, when I continue to be interrupted, to lose my spot, and I might have to start all over at the beginning if my train of thought continues to be interrupted frivolously by the Majority Leader. Unfortunately, a troubling pattern has emerged in many states regarding Minnesota. Secretaries of state across the nation have ignored their election law and laws and unilaterally changed the rules that govern elections. We understand that your lawsuit targets these illegal practices which occurred in Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. This must be addressed, and we support your effort to do so. Here in Minnesota, similar illegal actions occurred, and our election laws were violated by the Minnesota Secretary of State. In April, Minnesota Secretary of State came before the Minnesota legislature and asked for total authority to adjust Minnesota election rules in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. The Minnesota legislature refused to grant him that authority. In response to the Minnesota legislature's refusal, multiple lawsuits were filed against the against the state of Minnesota by Democrat groups. These groups demanded that election rules be changed. One of the judges in these cases was a former state political director for one of our U.S. senators. The parties involved in these lawsuits, all Democrats, eventually agreed to a settlement which instituted consent decrees that dramatically changed state election rules. That is what I just addressed in the background. That is the background I provided. That's in the letter we wrote. That's being filed in the Journal today. It's all connected, Madam Speaker and Representative Winkler. I hope you can connect the dots. In response to the Minnesota legislature's refusal, read that paragraph already, the Secretary of State is supposed to defend the election laws of Minnesota. Instead of defending our state laws, the Secretary allowed our election rules to be changed by Democrat interest groups. And there's a whole other side to the page, but I'll set that aside. I am proud, Madam Speaker, proud to be a co-signer with Representative Drazkowski, Representative Munson, Representative Miller, Representative Barr, Representative Franzen, Representative Gruenhagen, Representative Meckland, Senator Kiffmeyer, Senator Goggin, Senator Andrews, Senator Curran, Senator Weber, Senator Drazkowski, and Senator Draheim. We were the co-authors of this complaint that's being filed against us pertaining to this letter. So the lawsuit, Madam Speaker, I have in front of me here. The lawsuit that pertains to the letter that we sent to the Secretary, to the Attorney General of Texas. And Madam Speaker, I know if I were to read, much like I earlier read the Constitution, I know it falls on deaf ears on many in this chamber. I know the text of the Constitution. But Madam Speaker, to conclude my point of personal privilege, it takes two to tango. And the Democrats, on just the second day of this session, we have 2 long years together. And it takes two to tango, and you've just now asked us to dance. And it's unfortunate that this is how you guys are going to kick this off, with a frivolous action of a complaint that does nothing but maybe give you some warm fuzzies. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Sibley, for what purpose do you rise?
A point of personal privilege, Madam Speaker.
State your point of personal privilege.
I'd also like to address the entry into the Journal, and I'll try and keep it succinct. I won't go over some of the things that have already been stated by Representative Miller or Representative Lucero, but I do find myself in agreement with them. Okay, if you look at the protest and dissent, in the first paragraph, the third line down, it says their endorsement, meaning those of us who signed along with representatives and senators, is a seditious, unfounded, and divisive lawsuit brought by the state of Texas. So I do think it attacks our character as representatives. You know, but I find myself in good company on the letter. 22 states signed on to that Texas lawsuit. All 3 of our GOP U.S. congressmen signed on to that Texas lawsuit. Also, 126 U.S. congresspeople signed on in support of that lawsuit. As far as the statements by Representative Lucero about the illegality of the Secretary of State, I would refer members to the website of the Minnesota Voters Alliance, which I have found to have very credible information and have long time been a part of just elections. In there, you'll find on the front page an article titled "Absentee Ballots Illegally Counted, Laws Changed Without Legislative Approval." And it does implicate the Secretary of State. You get down to about the middle of the article, they list 14 things that were done by the Secretary of State without legislative House and Senate approval, contrary to the Constitution that we just gave an oath to support. In addition, members, after we're listed on this protest and dissent article, it says in line 1 and 2, it says that their endorsement, meaning our signers, of a lawsuit rejected by the entirety of the Supreme Court of the United States of America. That is false, members. 2 U.S. Supreme Court members, Justice Alito and Justice Thomas, voted to hear the case. The other 7 did not. So that should be corrected in the record. In addition to that, members, we could, as divisive as this is, as we're starting out, I want to bring some unity to this here in the body, okay? And what I mean by that, a lot of the contention that we have seen across this state and nation on this election, okay, is due to the fact that we lack certain accountability in the election process. In addition to secretaries of state or judges making election law, which again is contrary to the Constitution. And what I mean by that is if we had a voter ID law in this state, which by the way, you need a voter ID to cash a check, get on an airplane, and I could go on and on about that, especially in today's world. If we had a voter ID law, a lot of this dissension would have been eliminated. So if we could come together on that, I think we could start unifying ourselves on this election process rather than having this amount of divisiveness. Now, I have a senator in the Senate. There's a senator that is chief author, introduced a voter ID bill. I had it out for signatures today. I'll be introducing it in the next session. Members, I hope it can be bipartisan, that we can sign on to this, and it will go a long ways to ending some of the divisiveness on the voter ID. And a fingerprint, I got handed a note here from somebody, and and you can use a fingerprint to vote with a voter ID. So members, please think about that. Again, if you doubt any of the things that have been stated here in terms of the concerns, go to the Minnesota Voters Alliance page, read the article, and it's not only the things that have been mentioned, he has 14 things that were done without legislative approval. So please, members, this is a divisive issue, but out of it can come good if we unify behind a voter ID law. Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. And I know many of the members on the other side of the aisle that signed this protest and dissent. And I've known them for a long time, and I don't hold anything personally against them on this. But think about trying to do things to bring us together. And sometimes out of something divisive like this, we can actually come up with a solution that can bring more unity. Thank you, Madam Speaker and members.
The member from Douglas, Representative Franson, for what purpose do you rise?
Point of personal privilege, Madam Speaker.
State your point of personal privilege.
Madam Speaker and members, I did not know about this complaint until Representative Miller sent a message about it. Personally, I find the entire complaint stupid. And I laughed out loud when Representative Miller informed me that I was mentioned in this. I think what this is intended to do is to send a message to anyone else who questions anything about process or concerns we might have, that we will be punished for stepping out of line. To the people of my district, election integrity is important. They want to know that their vote counts. I want to know that my vote counts. We want to know that shenanigans aren't happening. And when election laws are changed during an election year outside of the legislature that make illegal votes easy to occur, people have the right to question those results. We answered the call to our constituents when they asked us to do something. The most that we could do was sign on to a letter to the Texas Attorney General. I don't regret signing my name, but what I do find is the hypocrisy that we did our job and a few small amount of members thought that we needed to ask their permission or something in order to represent the voice of the people. I feel that the House Journal is being weaponized against those that may question. We will be signing on to other letters, I am sure, just as if the Democrats will be signing on to letters. That is part of our job. Our part of our job is to represent the voice of the people. And as Representative Lucero said, two can play at this game, although I think we are all better than that. And I hope that we can take this opportunity to use this as a learning lesson, that we, individual people, are elected to represent the people who sent us down here. I know many of you have gotten a little bit lazy probably with the fact that Governor Walz is making the decisions for you. But it's time now to exercise your voice and use your election certificate to represent your people like we currently are. I want to thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity for me to raise this point of personal privilege. Thank you.
Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions at the House desk and online. If there is no objection, we will take action on these motions first. Hearing no objection, the motions prevail.
Doubt is introducing House Concurrent Resolution Number 1, a House Concurrent Resolution relating to Minnesota's peacetime emergency. House Concurrent Resolution Number 1 is being referred to the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
The member from Wabasha, Representative Driscowski.
Madam Speaker, actually, I had asked for to have a point of personal privilege earlier and didn't ask you for debate around this at this point. Thank you.
It would be in order at this point in time, Representative Driscowski, if you would like to make a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members. I rise to a point of personal privilege in objection to the very short-sighted and frivolous entry in the Journal on page 12 and 13 of day one of this session of this legislature. We had 8 members raise, as was pointed out by earlier speakers, a very frivolous entry into the Journal, an abuse of the Journal, in my mind, Madam Speaker. The Journal is there for real things, things that are things that endanger or threaten the integrity of our institution. As was pointed out by earlier speakers around this item, Madam Speaker, the effort in the letter that we brought forward was to bring notice to people that an illegal election was conducted in the state of Minnesota. The laws of the state of Minnesota guide our elections, and the executive branch is directed by those laws on how to run and conduct our elections in this state. As was pointed out earlier, instead what happened is we had a consortium of liberal interest groups that approached the state of Minnesota last summer. Shortly after, by the way, our Secretary of State approached the legislature and tried to gain full authority to do exactly the things that this liberal interest group came to the state of Minnesota, to our courts with, only months later. So the Secretary of State had said, give me the power to change our laws to do this. The legislature, Madam Speaker, said no. So the Secretary of State obviously went home, and then the liberal interest group came in the summer. And as they did in 6 other states or more states, there's probably more of them. They went all around the country with their trailer full of items that they wanted to change in the rules in the elections. They brought it to Minnesota and they sued the state of Minnesota, saying, change the requirement that that requires signatures on absentee ballots by witnesses. They came and said, allow people to harvest ballots unlimitedly. They came and said, give us another week to count ballots after the 8 p.m. deadline on election day. They said, we would like to change the ability that's written into Minnesota law so that somebody can assist voters in an unlimited fashion and assist unlimited numbers of voters. All of those, Madam Speaker and members, are in opposition 180 degrees to the laws of the state of Minnesota that the previous legislatures and governors have together written under the Constitution of the state of Minnesota to guide and direct and function our elections. So they came to the state, sued in court, our Secretary of State and our Attorney General, who are directed to represent the interests of Minnesotans and protect our laws in court, were there and didn't even fight. They were in front of a liberal judge who had been appointed to the court by a liberal governor who also, before she became judge, was a state policy director.
Representative Drazkowski, the individuals are not the subject of debate. You may discuss the actions that individuals have taken, but you may not address the personalities of individuals. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't think I mentioned any names, Madam Speaker, but this judge was actually a state political director for a U.S. senator in this state. So this was the environment, members, Madam Speaker, that these items that this interest group was bringing forward, this was the environment. All these people were of one political party. All of these people wanted to change our election rules, and they did it. They consented to it. They changed the rules completely contrary to Minnesota law that I think this legislative branch should have an interest in. As a matter of fact, I don't have to remind you, but Article 3, Section 1 of the Minnesota Constitution says only the legislature is supposed to exercise legislative powers, not the executive branch, not the judicial branch. The judicial and executive branch stole the authority of the legislature and provided an environment for the executive branch to conduct an illegal election in this state. And that's the basis, Madam Speaker and members, for the letter that I and 7 other members wrote from the Minnesota House. And we wrote it to the Attorney General of Texas, who was citing the fact that this was going on, the very same thing in numerous other states. And as a matter of fact, in the lawsuit that Ken Paxton brought forward, he cited the fact that both Article 1, Section 4 and Article 2, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution directed that the time, place, and manner of the conduction of elections in states for U.S. senators and U.S. Congress people and for presidents is directed to be conducted or be determined and overseen by state legislatures. That was the basis of the U.S. constitutional challenge that Ken Paxton brought. And our letter basically said, Mr. Paxton, we like the fact that you are bringing this discussion to adhere to the Constitution, but you forgot a state because Minnesota conducted an illegal election too. That, members, Madam Speaker, was a basis for the letter we brought forward. And we had 8 members of the majority that found it necessary to come forward with a very troubling letter to try to call each of us names like seditious and other things in their letter in order to sully our reputation in the legislature. Madam Speaker, members, we could play politics, as Representative Miller pointed out, in the House Journal each day. We could develop a statement like this that we brought forward, protest in dissent. We could bring a protest in dissent to the House Journal each session day if we wanted to. But that is not the use of this journal. These members that brought this should be ashamed of themselves for abusing the journal in this way. And they should also be ashamed of the fact that they don't seem to have regard for our Constitution. Because, Madam Speaker, the same day that they dismissed the constitutional violations that we cited in our letter, the very same day these 8 members said in front of God and the people of the state of Minnesota on TV, after being asked, do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Minnesota, and that you faithfully discharge the duties of the office to which you have just been elected to the best of your ability, so help you God? They said, I do. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Members, the appointment of standing committee assignments and the new committee meeting schedule will be published in today's journal. Announcements. Any announcements? Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, I move that when the House adjourns today, adjourns until 3:30 p.m. Monday, January 11, 2021.
Representative Winkler moves that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 3:30, Monday, January 11th, 2021.
Madam Speaker.
Please state your name.
Representative Eric Mortensen.
Representative Mortensen, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to invoke Rule 4.30 to recall House Concurrent Resolution 1 from committee and move the resolution and request a roll call vote.
We are past motions and resolutions. Representative Mortensen, we are in the middle of a motion to set the time for reconvening. All those in favor of the motion to reconvene at 3:30 Monday, January 11th, 2021, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Winkler moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no.
Aye.
No. The motion prevails. The House stands adjourned until 3:30 Monday, January 11th, 2021.
Aye.